As sun sets on summer and dusk brings fall, the days grow short and the nights grow long. As dawn brings winter, the skies become gray and the wind grows cold. By the fireside is where the stories are told.
They said the clearing was cursed, not because of what had been there, but because of what had been whispered. The stories stretched back into shadowed centuries, told only by those whose minds had been touched by things older than gods. They spoke of Astonis, not as a man, but as a presence that walked through knowledge like others walk through air. To know his name was to invite his gaze. To speak it aloud was to leave a mark upon your soul that could not be removed. A group of 5 made their ways to that place under the cover of night, following trails that no longer appeared on any map. They were not campers or hikers, but seekers of truths hidden beneath the weight of ages. Each carried with them fragments of old text, copied from forbidden scrolls and long-forgotten magical papyri. Their leader, an elder scholar with hollow eyes and breath that smelled faintly of ink, said they would find what they called the tongue of the rose. They reached the clearing just before midnight. The trees arched around them unnaturally, not bent by wind, but as if they had grown in reverence toward a central, unseen source. In the middle stood a great stone, covered in carved lines that shimmered faintly in moonlight. Though none of them had brought a light, the elder placed his palm against it and murmured a name not written in any language, a name said to be heard only in the deepest chambers of the soul. The wind stopped. The silence fell over the forest, not just the absence of sound, but a pressure that flattened the space around them. One of the younger initiates fell to his knees, his lips moving soundlessly as if praying. Though none had taught him any such rite, the elder told them to build a fire, not to warm themselves, but to wake the memory of the place. As the flames rose, the stone began to hum. The elder opened his pack and removed a scroll bound in blackened cord. He read from it slowly, carefully, invoking forces that had no origin in heaven or hell, only in the in-between. The words were not for understanding, but for transformation. He called on the guardians of the outer tongue, the hidden agents who moved between layers of the world, those who carried names across the borders of waking and dreaming. One by one, the fire began to reflect more than just light. Faces appeared within it, some human, some not. One wore a crown made of pine branches, slick with what looked like sap that smelled of blood. Another floated above a black stone shaped like a rose, and its petals closed around something unseen. The elder spoke louder, the ancient syllables catching in his throat like thorns. He named the watchers. He named the voices in the flame. And then he named Ostanis. The wind returned with a scream. The fire turned blue. The earth cracked. From beneath the stones something breathed. Not air, not memory, thick with the scent of frankincense and decay. The stone shifted, revealing a cavity below, filled with roots that pulsed like veins. The elder knelt and placed both hands onto the hollow. He whispered of the cosmic tree, of the black pine that dressed itself in death during the rites of rebirth. He spoke of the petals of silence, the rose that concealed the sacred contract of the gods. Suddenly the youngest among them screamed. He had touched the stone. It had answered. His fingers blistered as if pressed against fire. He turned and fled, but the trees had moved. The path they had taken no longer existed. Instead, there were rows of standing stones, each marked with the symbol of a closed eye. From between them emerged a figure, tall and robed, its face covered by a golden mask shaped like a lion's maw. It said nothing. It simply lifted its hand and pointed to the youth's chest. There, beneath his shirt, the skin writhed. Something was being written on him from within. The elder turned away and began to chant in a voice that did not belong to him. It was deeper, wider, filled with static and shadow. The others joined in without being taught. Their eyes went black. The scroll lifted into the air and burned without ash. The flames rose and formed symbols in the sky, tracing the patterns of the hidden temple beneath the stars. They were calling it forth, not from below, but from memory, from the realm of the unseen. The earth opened, and from it rose a tree. It was a pine, tall and dark, its branches wound in flesh instead of bark. From one of its limbs hung a stone disc that spun slowly, casting reflections of cities no longer remembered. At its base were roses, their petals glassy and wet, each one pulsing with a heartbeat. The figure in the golden mask knelt before the tree and opened its mouth, revealing no tongue, only a black mirror. The elder looked into it. He saw everything. He saw the rituals of Megalesia. He saw the lions that flanked the throne of the goddess. He saw the black stone that fell from the sky, and the rose that grew from secrecy. He saw the star that bore her name and the voices that called to it with verses from the old papyri. He saw the punished cities where children were passed through fire, not for sin, but for transformation. He saw Ostanis, no longer a name, but a door, The reflection faded. The elder turned back to his followers, but they were gone. In their place were roots, thick, twisted, hungry. Only the youngest remained, curled at the base of the pine tree, eyes wide open and white. In his hands he held a lotus carved from ash. It dripped blood. Then the fire went out, and the clearing returned to silence. Only the stone remained. Etched into its side, new words had appeared, written in a script older than stars. They pulsed with a soft glow, like breath beneath skin. And from that night on, those who spoke the name Ostanis near fire would find themselves whispering words they did not know, drawn to paths they could not explain, searching for a tree that grows in memory and wears a crown of pine. After that night, the elder was never seen again. The others, if they ever returned, did so not as they were. Rumors began to spread among scholars of forbidden manuscripts. A page from the Book of the Rose was found charred at the edge of a mountain shrine. A voice was heard chanting in the old tongue deep beneath the catacombs of a ruined monastery in Cappadocia. And one man, a traveler who had translated a funerary hymn from the Greek magic text, claimed to have seen a tree growing from a fault line beneath a monastery well, its bark etched with the pattern of eyes. He spoke of it to no one after that. They found him weeks later, covered in petals made of wax, a pine branch stabbed through his chest, his lips sewn shut with golden thread. The cult that formed after those events called themselves the Seeker of the Root. They rejected temples and ignored all canonical prayers. Instead, they worshipped in silence, wearing robes, dying in rose oil, or died in rose oil and pine sap, carrying discs carved with sifting letters that could only be read under starlight. They believed that truth was buried, not in the heavens, but in memory, and that to awaken it, one must pass through the three bells: speech, silence, and shadow. In the silence of their ceremonies, they drank from bowls shaped like blossoms. They cut their palms and fed the earth. They whispered invocations into roots, asking them to grow downward, to touch the bones of the forgotten ones, to feed upon the fire left behind by those cast out of heaven. It was not evil they sought, but restoration. They believed that knowledge had once been whole, that the rose had once bloomed in full, and that the pine had once stood at the center of the world before it was felled by the unwise. Their teachings said that the soul was layered like a rose with thorns between each petal to prevent unwarranted ascent. Only those willing to bleed could pass through. Ostanis, they claimed, had written this law in the blood of stars, with no wisdom would come without laws, no speech without silence, no vision without blindness, One of the elder texts described the lotus not as a flower, but as a veil. To be given the lotus was to be told that one had seen too much and must now forget. In their initiations, the final trial involved a moment of complete stillness. The initiates would sit in front of the great disc, blindfolded, as a line of fire was drawn in a circle around them. A voice, neither male nor female, would speak in a tongue no longer remembered, naming the initiates from the past and the ones still to come. When the fire died, if the initiate was still breathing, they were crowned with pine. The punishment for failure was not death, but memory. Those who failed the rite would remember the unseen things forever. They would walk the world, seeing the masks beneath faces, hearing the voices behind echoes, forever marked by the compulsion of the rite. These were the ones who became mad prophets, speaking of trees in the sky, of stone that whispered, and of roses that bled when touched. In a forgotten town along the southern coast, a traveler entered a chapel carved from the rock. Inside was no altar, no cross, only a single sculpture of a robed woman holding a mirror. On her head was a crown of pine, and beneath her feet were rose petals carved into the stone floor. The traveler asked the old man who tended the place who she was, but the man only pressed a finger to his lips. When the traveler turned to leave, he saw a mural on the wall behind the door. It showed a tree growing from a cracked heart. Above it, the words were written in a language he had never learned, but instantly understood. Beneath the rose is silence. Beneath silence is fire. Beneath fire is the name. He left that night and never returned. The story says that those who dream of pine trees lit from within will be called. They will wake with voices in their throat, ancient names pressed into their minds like stamps into wax. They will not remember learning. They will not remember learning them, only that they must speak them at firelight, where stone and root meet. There the tree will bloom again, and when it does, so too will the mask rise, the golden mask of the watcher, whose mouth is a mirror. And in that mirror they will see the truth. But the truth is not a gift. It is a bridge, and every bridge has a toll. Here is the final part of your story. The legend of the golden mask spread slowly, whispered between circles of scholars and secret initiates. The story always ended the same way. Those who crossed the threshold and gazed into the mirror never returned the same. Their bodies walked among men, but their souls had gone elsewhere, stitched to another world, a shadow realm where roses bled ink and trees whispered of things not meant for human ears. Some said the mask was not an object but a force. Some said that the mask was not an object but a force, a compulsion etched into existence by the ancient rites of those who had first touched the divine and lived. Others believed it was a guardian, a fragment of that old intelligence that predated born in the void between stars and fed on the words of the gods before they scattered. Its mouth, shaped like a perfect oval, held no tongue, only silence, deeper than the grave, older than dust. And when one stared into its mirror mouth, they saw their reflection, but a version of themselves untouched by time, raw and absolute. One night long ago, after the empires had fallen and new kings had named new gods, a hermit came to the valley where the temple of the mask once stood. He carried only a pine torch and a satchel of black salt. He walked the old path, carved by years of forgotten footsteps. When he reached the center, he found nothing but a basin of ash and petals. He knelt, placed the torch into the basin, and whispered a name that had not been spoken for 1,000 years. The ground groaned, the wind stopped, and from the earth rose the mask. It did not glow or speak, it simply hovered in the air, turning slowly until its mirror face met his eyes. What he saw was not a vision. It was a memory from the future. He saw cities built from symbols where roses grew from stone and children were born with mouths sealed by threads of gold. He saw men who had no shadows and women whose tears turned to ink upon the floor. And above it all, the tree, alive again, twisted up toward a sky of fire, blooming with petals made of glass. The hermit wept. He offered the salt. He kissed the mirror, and then he was gone. In that place now grows a single rose bush with 7 stems, none of which bear flowers. Locals avoid the area, claiming that voices echo through the roots of the surrounding trees. Some say that if you listen too long, you begin to forget the names of your children. Others say that the wind sometimes smells of pine and petals fall from nowhere into your lap, though no blossoms bloom overhead. They say that the story of the golden mask is not just a tale, but a warning, because the compulsion remains, because the mirror still waits. And if you speak the names from the forgotten pages, those names inscribed in ash and root and song, the bridge will rise again, the rites will return, the silence will descend, and what waits beyond the rose, beyond the tree, beyond the name, no one knows, because no one has returned to tell the tale. Only the mask remains, waiting, listening, ready.
As sun sets on summer and dusk brings fall, The days grow short and the nights grow long. As dawn brings winter, the skies become gray, and the wind grows cold. By the fireside is where the stories are told.